Welcome to Intergalactic Relations, a University of Sussex podcast. On this season's podcast, we explore the liberal utopianism of Star Trek The Next Generation. From the profound optimism of early seasons mirroring the optimism at the end of the Cold War, to the pessimism that creeps into the show a few years later as the inhuman results of shock therapy in the former Soviet Union and US misadventure in Somalia showed the limits of that post-Cold War order. We hope you'll learn a little about Star Trek and a little about international relations. Hi, I'm Dr. Faiz Sheikh, lecturer in international relations at the University of Sussex. I love Star Trek The Next Generation, especially the fact that it has self-identifying terrorists as good guys. That is not something you see after 9/11. But before that, this idea of freedom fighting is legitimate. And here we have a character who's openly about murdering peeps, and everyone's like, yeah, well done. Those are bad peeps you murdered. Which is interesting. With me are my co-hosts, Dr. Sarah Bulmer, Senior Lecturer in Politics and International Relations at the University of Exeter. Hello, Sarah.
Hi, Faiz.
And Dr. Dan Watson, Consultant Researcher on Civil Wars and Peace Building. Hi, Dan.
Hello. Hello.
Did you say hello twice, Dan?
I did. I talked over you when you were still introducing me.
I wondered if the microphone gave me an echo. I was like, oh no, my kids.
I heard it twice too, don't worry.
I'm just checking there was no technical issue. All right, for this episode, we watched Pre-emptive Strike, Season 7, Episode 24 of Star Trek The Next Generation. In this episode, a sort of returning secondary character, Ro Laren, who is a kind of operational person. She wears red for what that matters on the ship, and sometimes she's security, sometimes she's she's a problem solver, and she's just come back from advanced tactical training, which everyone makes a big deal out of. It's like, I don't know, joining the Green Berets or something. They make it sound like she's been put through the works and must be super cool badass now that she's back. And she returns to the ship. She's got all these new skills, and very quickly she's asked to put those skills to the test because there is a group of, well, I don't know what to call them. I'll call them by their screen name. They're called the Maquis, and they are a group of Federation citizens who are now, as a result of a peace agreement, planets have been swapped, and these Federation citizens now live under the jurisdiction of an opposing star empire called the Cardassians, who are militaristic and presented as baddies.
They're kind of like a partisan force, aren't they?
Yeah, they're civilians who've armed themselves to fight the Cardassian civilians who are also arming themselves. They supposedly live in a demilitarized zone. Neither the Federation, that is Starfleet, the Enterprise, the people that we've been following on the show, nor the Cardassian equivalents, they're not the ones doing the fighting. It's the civilians of both sides who are arming themselves and sort of, I don't know what's presented as. Sometimes it reminds me of sort of the breakdown of Yugoslavia or something, like some other example of intercommunal conflict sort of descending into something like civil war. But it's not quite that. It's there's a lot going on, and we'll get to it. But anyway, this is happening, and there's some flashpoint in this demilitarized zone, and they send Ro Laren undercover to infiltrate the Maquis, the terrorists / freedom fighters, and she's meant to lure them into a trap so that they can put an end to them. And she refuses. She has a change of heart. She joins the Maquis, betrays the Federation, betrays Picard's trust, and that's the culmination of the episode. We're going to discuss many of those details first in a bit of lay critique, and then we will apply our international relations analysis to those issues that we've identified, and then finally we will think about what the episode can tell us about the liberal utopia of the show. beginning with the first segment. I've gone over some of the plot points, but I don't think I've done any of them justice. This is quite a meaty episode, so maybe we can go through it again, making pit stops at those issues that you want to bring up. What do we think? What is a good place to start with? What is a good thing to start with?
I think maybe the character of Ro Laren. I really liked Ro Laren. She's someone who's introduced later on in Star Trek: The Next Generation, and she's a character along with somebody like Reg Barkley, who appears in certain episodes. He's played by an actor who I believe was on Cheers. Is that right?
Nah, he was in the A-Team.
Was he in the A-Team? Was it?
He was Howling Mad Murdoch in the A-Team.
Right, yeah. So he's kind of a comic relief character, but also has social anxiety, whereas Ro Laren is a different type of outsider who has a degree of kind of integrity and self-reliance that rubs up against a lot of the kind of disempowering aspects of Starfleet, the kind of the procedures, chains of command and that kind of thing. And that also sets up a number of really interesting stories there.
That's a really interesting way of putting it, the disempowering aspects of Starfleet. Sarah, what are you saying? I know you're a big fan of the character.
I am, but I think she's quite complex because on the one hand, she could be seen as a subversive character, like Dan's saying, that she often rubs against the sort of rules and regulations. And one of the main storylines of her is basically that she comes in and Picard kind of mentors her into a Starfleet officer because he sees this potential in her if she could just rein in her sort of more wild impulses. And so there's that going on. But she's also quite a stereotype as well, because on the one hand she's sort of feisty and independent and doesn't care about rules, but on the other hand she's traumatized. She grew up on the Bajoran camps, she's an orphan, she watched her dad get murdered by the Cardassians, and then in the end she ends up in these rather, which I only realise I'm watching this again, dodgy relationships with older men, which is the sort of a classic predatory kind of like trope. I mean, and we can explore this a bit later. So she is a very interesting character, and Faiz, you put in your notes that she's one of the more kind of three-dimensional characters. That she's really quite complex, and there's a lot going on there, and there's a lot to like, and she has an interesting journey. So yeah, I really do like Ro, but I'm not sure about her role in the narrative and what that character is doing.
Well, you mentioned the Bajoran camps. I think we can pause the discussion a little bit just to say that at this point, we've mentioned it in previous episodes, but at this point Star Trek: The Next Generation is being aired in 1993 or 4 this is, alongside its sister show, Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Gene Roddenberry, the creator of Star Trek in the 60s, has passed away, and the show's new showrunner has taken Star Trek into a darker place, to the extent that we can talk about a character like Ro Laren, who is a child of a concentration camp, essentially, who has to deal with that history while trying to live up to the standards that, until now, only our utopian, sort of self-fulfilled, enlightened, sort of human characters have been part of. We talked about previously, everyone on this ship plays an instrument and speaks, does theatre and whatnot alongside their space exploration and their mastery of astrophysics. And that was possible in this imagination of the show whereby this was humanity's utopian future. When you introduce a character like Ro, who didn't have that background, she's not learning to do these things because she grew up in a flipping concentration camp under occupation, brutal occupation by the Cardassians, which was all introduced in Star Trek Deep Space Nine, the sister show. So this is partly, I think, what makes this particular episode so interesting and so rich with things for us to discuss, because it's a very clear example of the sort of classic Star Trek utopia rubbing up against the limits of what you can imagine and what kind of politics you can undertake in such a quote-unquote utopian vision.
Yeah, I think it's a good kind of clash of the high politics and the low politics, if you will.
Exactly. So Ro is the singular character that I can think of that has that going for her. Saying that, Guinan is also shares a traumatic history, basically a child of genocide. Her species no longer exists because the Borg wiped them out. And that is mentioned all the way back in season 2, so that's well in the sort of prime utopian Star Trek days. But I guess it's mentioned, and she sort of shrugs and gets on with it. It's not explored. There's no darkness to her as a result of that. Whereas with Ro, it is, I don't know, can I use the word realistic in a show about the 24th century star, space exploration? But it's something like that.
Is it worth talking about what Dan's getting at there with the high and low politics? I think it's worth explaining what's going on with the Maquis and why they ended up living in Cardassian territory. Because this is also just so reminiscent, isn't it, of carving up Africa, the grab for Africa and colonialism and all of that. It just seems perhaps we should talk a bit about that as well.
I was trying to kind of look up some of this stuff before the show, so I'll just give my version of my narrative, but then we can correct it if need be. So, the Maquis are a byproduct of a series of developments that have taken place on the kind of the fringes of Federation space, where they merge with Cardassian space, and there are certain planets that have been occupied by Federation citizens and others occupied by Cardassian citizens, with competing historical claims as to who originally owned these planets. One way in which these tensions were diffused was through what later turns out to be a quite flawed peace agreement between the Federation and the Cardassians, which leaves certain groups marooned in the territory controlled by the other political power. And this is the Maquis have emerged partly as a civilian resistance movement, but also with some connections to Starfleet. They're not official connections, even though the Cardassians frequently allege that they are. But there are certain officers who are sympathetic or who have defected to this resistance movement in the hope of, firstly, self-defense against predation by Cardassian, essentially paramilitaries, who are more overtly an extension of the Cardassian Empire, but also more broadly to contest this peace agreement that has led to an inequitable situation.
And actually, this story carries on across numerous series, doesn't it? Because Deep Space Nine has Ben Sisko and his old colleague who then defects to the Maquis, and he tries to persuade him not to, and all of this. And then I can't remember if there's any more of them in there, probably, because the whole thing is based on the occupation, isn't it, and the legacies of that.
Yep.
And then Voyager, of course, half the crew is made up of ex-Maquis fighters, isn't it?
Yep, absolutely. So while Deep Space Nine is dealing with Bajor, a planet called Bajor, and its historical occupation by Cardassia, and Ro Laren, the character we're talking about today, is Bajoran and grew up under that occupation. The Maquis share the same adversaries, shall we say, the Cardassians, but they are not the same as the Bajorans, because it's more like, as Sarah said, the scramble for Africa. These are colonists who have gone out and taken over other worlds, whereas the Bajorans live on the planet Bajor, which is their home planet. They're the natives, so to speak. So the Maquis are super interesting, and I think, Dan, you sent me an article that or something that was making a point about the Maquis, saying that they are like doomsday preppers, or they're not as legitimate as the show thinks they are, because they are masquerading as Bajorans. These are people, they came from somewhere, they have homes and families elsewhere. They've chosen to go to the frontier, let's say, in this imaginary frontier, and make a claim. And then when when they've been told they have to leave because, we've made a peace agreement, and they refuse to leave because what? They're using this as an excuse to pretend to be freedom fighters when they're not Bajorans. This isn't an equivalent case. They could just get up and go and colonize one of the other innumerable planets in the universe. I don't get it. It's complicated.
No, I was just going to say, it's really reminiscent of Israel-Palestine, but I don't know if I want to go there. But isn't it?
It is. It totally is. Dan, what are you saying?
I think the Maquis, to a certain extent, they are a kind of projection of discontent within the Federation at some of the Federation's sort of perceived shortcomings and kind of its inaction and so on. And it's not necessarily, it's difficult to pin down because there's elements that we traditionally associate with the political left and then elements that we'd associate with the political right combined together into a quite contradictory movement. And this works really well in somewhere like Deep Space Nine that explores these contradictions and shades of grey in the context of Star Trek The Next Generation that tends to be a bit more black and white in its thinking. Not always, but in the main. Then it's quite difficult to reconcile some of the self-understanding of Starfleet as being generally a kind of benevolent, benign place, and then this kind of partial outgrowth that challenges, undermines, but also upholds some of the tenets of Starfleet.
Yeah, and if you watched along with us and you enjoyed this episode and its exploration of the shades of grey, as Dan was saying, then definitely check out Star Trek Deep Space Nine. It's it's all this, and it's fantastic. I think. I don't know. Don't want to piss off the purists, but it's good stuff. Okay, cool. So we have Ro, outsider, grew up in the Cardassian camps on Bajor, and we have the Maquis, who are civilians living in this demilitarized zone who are arming themselves because whatever, population transfers or I don't know what's going on in this demilitarized zone, who owns which planets or whatnot, but it's clear from the episode that what the Maquis are doing is putting the peace agreement between the Federation and the Cardassians in jeopardy, because the Cardassians, I think, the episode, early in the episode, it starts with Maquis fighters attacking a Cardassian ship, and the Federation, the Enterprise, the protagonist ship has to go and help the Cardassians. They're helping the enemy. Riker, I think, says, I could never believe we'd be helping them. But they've made peace at this point, and to maintain that peace, they have to stop the Maquis and protect the Cardassians.
Yeah, he says in your notes, Faiz, you've written it, firing on our own to protect a Cardassian.
Yeah, exactly. Self another alive and well in the 24th century.
Yeah.
I think there's, on a more mundane level, I think there's many aspects of this episode that are quite amusing. There's a particular scene where there's a lot of interaction between Ro and Captain Picard, which I'm sure we'll come on to later, but there's a particular scene where they're pacing backwards and forwards around the conference table, and they just keep turning and walking the other way, and it's like the corridor was out of use that day on filming, and they have in this quite small room that they're endlessly pacing around, which I really liked. And there's certain lines, one that when at the beginning of the episode, Ro Laren comes into a welcome back party, and she's clearly uncomfortable there, and gets kind of Captain Picard makes an excuse to get her out of there. But I believe it's him who says, "You look very fit, Lieutenant." Was that Picard who said that, or was it someone else?
Yeah,
Picard says.
Picard.
Yeah.
You're looking very fit. Tactical training agrees with you.
Nasty. It's
weird.
So grim.
Sarah and I both have in our notes how problematic we found that relationship between Picard and Ro. The show is going for a mentor figure, a surrogate father figure.
Yeah. But none of it would work if she wasn't a woman. And so that's your clue. You're like, well, this only makes sense because it's a young woman.
Do you think? Does Picard have similar chats with Riker?
Wesley, maybe? But
No, he hates Wesley.
No. Even Wesley, it's different. It's not. Yeah, it's not the same. It's massively gendered and hetero and weird.
It's really weird. I mean, even Ro, at some point I said, is Ro his surrogate daughter, protege, or pet? At some point it's like it could maybe even be that. Like it's.
He basically fancies her though. He does a bit.
Yeah, and there's a really awkward. I mean, there's a lot of awkward scenes. Where they meet in a bar and she's basically pretending to be a prostitute in the bar and they keep stroking each other and looking suggestively, and then Picard puts a bit of money on the table.
What did Faiz write in his notes about that? And I was like, that's hilarious. Undercover Picard pretending to be Richard Gere is rough.
Yeah.
Ro's like Pretty Woman. It kind of is like that because he's trying to redeem her.
Exactly.
It's so creepy. And then in that is that the later conversation? Yeah, when he then turns on her and starts threatening her with court-martial.
Yeah.
And it's really like, this is abusive. This is like some weird abusive relationship where you are once, as long as she's playing along, you're all nicey nice and like mentoring and
something like this is your chance to prove your loyalty. Like this is the underlying mission here, not just infiltrating the Maquis, but it's a personal mission to me.
And then he says, I've got no problem court-martialing you or putting you in front of a board of inquiry. It's like, oh my God. Like he turns on him.
Yeah, totally. That was heavy stuff.
It's so bad.
Because before that point, it's creepy, but it's downright sinister. Like at the point where she's expressing second thoughts about the mission. She's deep undercover at this point. And has made friends with the Maquis and has seemingly respects some of them or some of the principles that they're fighting for, something like this. And she's not willing or expresses to Picard her unwillingness to follow through on the mission, which the mission involves some kind of entrapment to catch them all. And Picard,
he's pushing buttons that is quite manipulative because she has this history of being disobedient, and he's trying to play on that.
Exactly. It's horrific. He's like a predatory abuser of a violent orphan, a traumatized orphan. That's what it is, and it is creepy. And she plays along with it to start with as well, because she's like, when she's offered the mission, which she's already obviously a bit like, this, I'm not sure about this, but okay. And she's like, there's one good reason to take this mission, and that's to validate your faith in me. And I'm like, oh God. And I've written like, get me the sick bucket. This is horrendous. But then it just gets more and more dark and sinister as the episode goes on. But thankfully she turns on them and she does what she wants. So it's like, go Ro. She decides at the last minute she's not doing it. She warns all the other Maquis, and then she just like says, right, I'm off, Riker, bye. And tell Picard I'm sorry. Tell him I'm sorry.
Yeah, she's in a shuttlecraft with Riker at the end. And because Riker and Ro have a quite complicated relationship in previous episodes, but they seem to have reached a kind of mutual respect at this stage.
No one answered my question in the notes.
What's your question?
They banged. Yeah, they did. They did bang.
Yeah, that was when they had their memories wiped.
Yeah, there was banging. That was in that that episode where they've all got like memory wiping, and then it's all like and so she's like, maybe we were together or whatever, and then they're like banging. Yeah. And Riker's also all over Troy because she senses something between them. But there's no banging there.
I don't remember. I don't remember that episode.
Clues.
Yeah, it's a really good. Yeah, it's a really good episode because Worf thinks he's the captain, doesn't he? Because he has the weird chainmail thing, and then it turns out he's not. Obviously.
Why don't they have the memory? Sorry,
it's because they come across a more advanced isolationist species that say, you've discovered us, so we're going to have to destroy you. And Picard's like, no, what we can do is we can stage manage it. You've got technology that can wipe our memories, and we'll just make it look like there's no reason to investigate you. and like Data's involved in it because his memory can't be wiped, and he fluffs it a bit, no, sorry, am I mixing up 2 episodes?
It's not Data's fault. No, Data's really good. That's how it all gets discovered, though, because Data's lying.
There's another one where their memories gets wiped, but they've got an infiltrator on the ship that's trying to maneuver them into attacking a space station that's really much weaker than them, and then it's probably from one of those 2 episodes. I can't remember which, but yeah.
No, it's Clues. You were right. It's Clues. It's the one where Bev is like growing cultures, and they grow like too much within 24 hours, and then they're like, so, and then they're investigating. Yeah. So yes, banging. There was some Ro and Riker banging, but then, to be honest, who hasn't Riker banged? And then how the hell did he get onto the Maquis? Like, how did he get into the Maquis and infiltrate them to accompany Ro? And then Faiz has written in the notes, the previous deleted scene is him like banging someone to like get in, and it's true.
He seduced his way in.
Totally.
His way into and out of all problems for Riker.
But like Faiz, you also noticed that Riker comes across really well in that scene. He comes across as really reasonable and sophisticated, unlike Picard, who basically just throws his toys out of the pram.
Absolutely. Riker, he doesn't have a lot of scenes in this one, but he seems to respect Ro as a person and gives her that dignity. Whereas Picard refuses to see her as a person for as long as she's not
his pet,
obeying his commands. Yeah.
And I know Faiz probably won't want to talk about Picard series, but she
Picard.
She comes back in the 3rd series as
I love it.
If it's not an admiral, I think it's like a captain. She's basically been rehabilitated and let back into the fold somehow. That's not really explained, but.
Isn't she involved with the Secret Service or something?
In military intelligence, I think.
Exactly.
Or something like that,
Yes.
Yeah, like Picard, if I recall correctly, does he still have a grudge? Got an
he's still really bitter. Yeah. And they have this really tense scene, and it's like epic. I loved it. Yeah, it's like the showdown, and what's it supposed to be, like 20 or 30 years later? he's still
brooding on it.
It's good. It's good stuff. It's the best of the bits that I saw, but it is a rerun of this episode.
Yeah, I know, but that's what's great though. It's like the
but they didn't even they had to contrive a way to get Ro back into Starfleet so they could just do the same thing again.
I loved it.
I don't know.
I'm gonna watch it again. In fact, this made me want to watch it again.
Yeah.
That's the I think I've got it saved. Like I was doing screenshots. Oh my god, am I really going to reveal this to the podcast? Because I was like, this is so good, and sending it to my other like Trekker fans.
I will definitely keep it in. We won't cut that out, Sarah. You'll see. Okay, so Riker comes across well. Picard does not. We're sympathetic as the audience to the Maquis. They're not talked about as terrorists in this episode. In the sister show, Deep Space Nine, one of the main characters, the second in command on that show, a character called Kira, does explicitly refer to herself as a terrorist, and she's proud of it, and she doesn't, she won't take no crap off anyone from Starfleet, that is, who wants to use high morals to say like, oh, what you did was wrong. She's like, no.
She's actually a much better feminist icon. Actually, sorry, just thinking of that.
No,
Nerys. Major Nerys.
That's right. She's, in general,
she doesn't have any of these weird old predatory men. I mean, she actually is she's confident and independent and bullshit, just like Ro, but without all of the like weird sort of patriarchal stuff around her.
So they're not explicitly called terrorists, but they are very much civilians arming themselves. The episode is called Pre-emptive Strike, so you can't even call it defending themselves. They've decided to do a bit of a, oh god, what's he called? They're doing a bit of a Donald Rumsfeld and decided that it's still legitimate defense to attack somebody before they've attacked me. Even though I don't know that they're going to attack me, I just heard it one time from somebody.
And they might be trying to create. There might be some weapons of mass destruction. I mean, how prescient is this?
Yeah.
They might be creating weapons of mass destruction. Is basically the argument.
So
Biogenic.
So the Maquis say, okay, let's grab all the guns and go and kill them before they kill us. So in another show, they could very well be terrorists. In this one, they are.
Well, there's kind of like an affable older man who sort of seems to be the leader of that cell, and then you've got this like this scene where she's basically like Ro. This is basically rendered unconscious and wakes up in like a weird room with people pointing guns at her, saying, "Oh, we're no threat to you," and when they clearly are being a threat. And you see this kind of dual character of the. Of at least that cell.
I think it's Nechayev, the conversation between Nechayev and Picard, that sets it up right at the beginning and tells the audience that the Maquis are like good guys. Because she basically says, I'd sleep with a phaser under my bed. I don't trust the Cardassians. And yes, the Cardassians are breaching the peace agreement, but we don't want to go to war with them, so we're going to, we need to rein this problem in. But we're sort of told, aren't we, that the Maquis are right. So that shapes the whole way that we look at them.
Absolutely. That said, it's Picard who comes up with the dastardly entrapment plan.
Which is so weird.
It's not very...
But it is and it isn't, though, is it? Because he's totally on board with, spying on and acting undercover against Federation citizens in a way that in previous episodes he would have had a moral, there would have been a whole thing about security and liberty, right? We already did that episode on that when we looked at Drumhead. But this time he's totally on board with it. He's like, they have no rights, we can do whatever. He's like the automaton, but then it's like, Faiz, in your notes you said, but is this an aberration or is this just actually liberalism? Is this liberal Picard at its kind of most acute in the end when push comes to shove?
The difference with the Drumhead is that the Maquis are explicitly in breach of various multilateral treaties, which we know the Liberals love. So they're outsiders. Like when you breach those treaties, then are you deserving of liberal rights anymore? Whereas
that's exactly
in the Drumhead, no one's done anything. And they're still being treated with suspicion, and even though they're abiding by all the rules of the game. Here, the Maquis have rejected some rules of the game, therefore they become legit targets, right? Now you're a rogue state, now I can do whatever I want.
Because they're on the periphery of the liberal order.
Yeah. Okay, so Maquis good, Cardassians bad, Federation, Picard horrible.
Picard horrible. He's horrible in this. He's like an automaton, devoid of any moral kind of qualities.
Though he has that moment right at the beginning, which I've found, is it character growth? Or again, is it an aberration? He actually showed empathy for, he read people's emotions and understood that Ro was uncomfortable in that party scene where they're giving her that welcome back party, and he contrives a way to get her out of there. And that was nice of him.
I don't know, I think... Yeah, but I think he does. I mean, leadership is all about emotional intelligence, and he definitely has that. So that is Picard. But it's the politics where I think it was just weird. He went all hardcore, totally unthinking, weird about this mission, obsessed.
Yeah, faith in the institution above all.
In a way that he often doesn't. He's often pushing back against Federation stuff and trying to make the Federation better, right? Holding a mirror up to it and going, we need to be better than this, blah, blah, blah. But this time, he's just totally just following the party line.
Yeah, I mean, one could say that perhaps his discomfort at what he's doing is pushing him to extremes, but he also seems to bring out a side of him that's just not very pleasant at all.
No, because then it all gets played out against Ro. He wants to control Ro, and then he can't. So it ends up being this toxic masculinity thing going on. Yeah.
I wish. I mean, he comes up with the plan, and I wish that Worf had said something about it, because they are really behaving duplicitously. And I mean, I don't know. Maybe this counts as standard police work, but it's they are not.
Yeah.
not being nice about it.
No honour.
No honour in it, definitely. It's all about deception and whatnot. And I wonder what Worf would have said, and does Worf's respect for Picard change as a result? I don't know. We've discussed the episode more or less in its entirety. We maybe haven't talked about, before we move on, we'll just talk about that second elderly character, elderly man who is the leader of the particular Maquis cell that Ro is infiltrating, and who Ro finds very sympathetic, but he's also a bit creepy, in the same way Picard is towards Ro, and it's this man essentially that turns her against Starfleet and against the other man in her life, Mr. Picard. So
gross. Yeah, and he trusts her, doesn't he? He like shows her the camp before they've done the background check, and it's only the woman, I forget her name, with the longer hair, the Maquis woman, who's basically like a bit like, we shouldn't just trust this woman, like we shouldn't just, but the man, he's just already decided she's one of them. Ugh, pathetic, because basically he like kind of sort of fancies her, sort of feels like a dad, same dynamic, weird.
There's one moment.
Ugh.
I think they're discussing a plan to do something, steal medical supplies, which they need if they're going to do this preemptive strike. And Ro, who's this relative stranger at this point, she's just met them and just infiltrated them, and she's like, "Oh, I can do it. Just like give me a ship and I'll smash it. No worries." And everyone else is like, "No, like of course not. You who are you? We're not trusting you with this, and you're not taking our resources." And the old man just looks at her like, yeah.
Yeah, so wrong because he and. Oh, it's just such a cliche.
He overrules everyone's concerns and he just says, "Yep, give her the ship. She can do it. I trust her." And everyone looks at him like, "What is wrong with you?" And
I trust her. I like this younger woman.
Yeah.
But then he dies, doesn't he?
He dies, and he says,
dies like a martyr. Which is,
And he says, don't cry, don't worry about it. When an old fighter like me dies, someone will come in and take my place, which is the final bit of blackmail on her to be like, "Yo, stick around, Ro. Can you do this for me? Bro. I'm dead now." That said, let's move on then and try and relate this to some broader themes in international relations, or apply some of the things that the tools that international relations gives us to analyse the show. So when we watched this episode at the University of Sussex during the so-called Star Trek seminar series, we had postgraduate researcher Tom Cohen come and talk to us about his research, how it relates to the episode, etc. And Tom does work on the far right. Broadly speaking, he talked about rebel politics in general. And what he noted was that the episode resembled quite a lot a Western, insofar as there's a tavern and there's this sort of frontier which is somewhat lawless, but in how it's depicted in the show, it's quite a multi-species haven. When you get to this tavern, there's humans, there's Vulcans, there's whoever else, all there, and it seems like away from the hierarchies that the Federation imposes, people seem to get along okay over here, which was interesting. And he also talked about how the politics of the Maquis seem to take a second place to the dance, the feast, the food. These are the things that give life to the movement, which also, he said had resonances to how he observed the far right in the US. Not to say that the Maquis are analogous with the far right, but that's what he was drawing from. Those things said, then, what do we want to discuss? I think the pertinent thing is, of course, what we've already discussed around terrorism, I guess, or the way in which the show is trying to talk about legitimate self-defense.
Yeah. I think it's also about the limits. Maybe there's something to say about the limits of the bordered imaginary.
Ooh, nice. I love it.
I think there's something to say about that because, and this relates to how we think in IR about the construction of states, and that actually there's a lot of work that's looked at bordering practices as essentially these kind of politically arbitrary lines that we draw, and that applies in this, certainly in Africa, where you can see the lines that were actually drawn in that Berlin conference when the European powers divided up the territory for the scramble for Africa. But they're also arbitrary in the sense that they're politically contextual. Right, there's nothing natural about them. They develop over time. In other states, all states, right? And so I think there's something interesting going on in this episode about those boundaries around political communities and where borders are drawn, and the way in which some people can feel an allegiance to a different group, even though they are within the boundaries of one. And so I think it gets at that kind of contingency. Maybe it's that contingency of these borders that we draw. And it's nice because much of the Starfleet universe is very neat. The communities and the essentialized cultures fit with their borders, fit with their boundaries, and there's a nice story, and then this state gets on with that state, or this planet gets on with that planet, and and it's all mediated through
it's
treaties.
very like functionalist, and everyone has a particular role.
And everything works, and it all aligns, and it's all fine. And there's even places. There's an episode, isn't there, where they go in the Prit, is it, where there's civil war going on, and one half of that planet wants to join the Federation, and then the Federation goes, no, because you've got issues, and until you are a united planet, you can't join. So in the Starfleet world, it's all about a synergy between the people, the culture, the borders, and then you can join. But with the Maquis and what's going on in this episode, it's all about the limits of that, and that actually sometimes people don't like the borders that are drawn around them, and then they act against it. And that's something that comes up later, isn't it? When we're going to do Homewood, aren't we?
Yes, we are.
Is it Homewood? Journey's End. Journey's End.
Yep.
And that revisits that. Sorry, this is a really long-winded way to get at it, but I think there's something about that.
Yeah, I also think the sort of touching on something I mentioned earlier, but in a way I see the Maquis as a rebellion against the kind of the sort of stuffiness of the of Starfleet, that it is if people do want a bit of excitement, they want a bit of passion, then you've got it with the Maquis, and you're not going to get that with the kind of the sort of proceduralism and bureaucracy of the Federation, and it feels more alive as a result of that. And it's, I think, one of the reasons that we often tend to think of like conflicts and as being like a breakdown of things, that things have stopped working, but there are actually reasons, like emotive reasons or aspirational reasons why people might join in with an armed movement. And I think the Maquis kind of they use quite effectively to illustrate that.
Yeah, you get the sense that the bonds of loyalty are stronger, and you get that in Voyager as well. There's, and like fighting for a higher cause that you all believe in against the odds seems to have much more emotional pull than Starfleet. But knowing what we've all watched, would you rather be in the Federation, like hardcore Federation, or would you rather be in the Maquis? Who looks like more fun and more?
Maquis look like more fun. I mean, but you don't have a holodeck, so yeah.
My mind immediately went to the holodeck. I was like, well, obviously Starfleet.
So you can go to the holodeck is essentially like the masturbation hole of the ship. I mean, it's grim. There's so many allusions to that, isn't there? The writers love it. Ugh.
Yeah, in Deep Space Nine in Quark's bar, they put
they just go full on explicit in there, but it's all there in Star Trek Next Generation. It's dodgy as hell, and it's usually the men. In fact, it's always the men, isn't it? Having these either holodeck women or facsimiles of actual women, or playing like members of the crew.
But if I wanted to pretend to be a Maquis and whatever, I could do it in the holodeck.
No.
If I needed that excitement in my life, whatever, I can just pretend.
If I could be in the early season of Next Generation, when the Federation makes sense and it's all just moral and worthy, I'd choose that one. But then once the kind of blinkers come off and we see the limits of this and realities of this, which we've kind of shown, I think, that was sort of always there all along, but never fully explored until the end of the later seasons. I'd rather be in the Maquis.
I just can't get behind the Maquis, and this is one of the reasons some of the purists dislike the Maquis and various other innovations of the next showrunner Bulmer, who came on after Gene Roddenberry. It's a post-scarcity society with an infinite cosmos, but the Maquis are just cosplaying as sort of freedom fighters when they could just as easily move.
But how long have they lived there? How long do you have to live somewhere before you're allowed to have a claim on it? I mean, that's also a political question, isn't it?
Yeah, interesting.
Whose territory it is. We see that going on, the war in Ukraine at the moment.
I think one of the dynamics that happens with the Maquis is that people become drawn in as a result of the abuses, predominantly by the Cardassians as well. That ends up becoming a catalyst for grievances to kind of mount and encourage further mobilisation as well. So, in that sense, that's again talking about the affective or the emotional drivers of political change.
In the next episode we're going to discuss Journey's End. We're looking at another population in another territory swap who now belong to the Cardassians, and they should evacuate, have been asked to evacuate, but choose not to. They say, like, no, man, this is our home. Yeah, things might change with the Cardassians, but we is staying. And we're not going to pick up arms and cause a fuss. So, what's going on with the Maquis? Why are they... It's because Cardassian civilians are doing the same thing, presumably. Right? It's this tit-for-tat intercommunal violence that's going on.
So Faiz, stop using intercommunal violence. I really don't know. I wrote that article about people should stop using it.
Tell us why. Why should we stop using the term?
Because basically it doesn't mean anything. What is a communal group? It's meaningless as a term. It originates from the India, from within India, like Hindu Muslim violence. And basically the colonial powers, they didn't know what word to use because they didn't want to call them like nations, because it would, under the colonial mentality, it didn't make sense to. They didn't really want to call them races either, so they just invented this weird category of communal. But one of the functions of communal violence was that it made it out as like, oh, it's just two like groups, mobs from different communities fighting each out. And what that does is write out the role of government actors in either creating situations for it, actively inciting or manipulating this, or selectively disengaging from it. And it is basically now, because no one likes to write about tribal violence or to a lesser extent into ethnic violence in Africa, it's basically being transported to other contexts, including in Africa, where this... It basically does the same thing. It makes it out to be, it's a bunch of like random guys fighting about cows and land, and it's communal violence, guys. Like, whereas in reality, a huge amount of this violence is the result of political manipulation and machinations, rather than being sort of spontaneous yokels going at it with each other. So that's the reason not to use it. I think we should.
So it's kind of depoliticizing, because it's kind of a bit like
precisely.
ethnic, isn't it? It's a bit like ethnic or tribal wars, sort of that kind of discourse.
Precisely. So
as you said. So then, in this episode's context,
but I mean, but Faiz, how long had the Maquis been? Those Federation citizens been on that planet? Like, how long do you think they have to live there before they have a claim to it? This is a question. These are deep. This is a deep political question, isn't it? And there's lots of like parts of. I mean, this is an ongoing thing in global politics, isn't it? There are groups within countries that want to be their own state. There are stateless peoples who don't have a state or aren't allowed in, or have had their state, citizenship taken off them. There are groups claiming other bits of other states, like in Ukraine, Russia and Ukraine claiming that territory.
I think that also the Maquis have
Israel,
like a kind of
Palestine.
secessionist streak to them. That they're like they're kind of a portent of the future. That if the Federation doesn't improve, you're going to get people who are like, no, this isn't our forever empire that we want to be part of. Actually, we'll go it alone, thanks. Which must be really challenging to the Federation mindset.
I don't know how long they've been on the planet.
I mean, because in one sense, they just want to live their life on that planet. It's not like the Cardassians.
I don't know how long they've lived there, but they are talked about as colonists.
Yeah, but was there anyone on there then?
Presumably not. At least the Federation wouldn't have sent people there if there were already people there. The Cardassians might have and exterminated.
So they're a group of people who've built their home in a place, in a community, in a society, and then all of a sudden the Federation has signed off their land to someone else.
But it's a post-scarcity society. There is no struggle involved in having exactly the same quality of life. Exactly
find
the same.
another M-class planet.
You just yeah, we just saw it in the last episode.
But it's not true. No, but that's not true, Faiz. Because that episode where Data is sent to warn this society that they're going to be. Is that called? Who's that? That's someone coming to like
the Shiliak.
The Sheliak, who those brilliant ones that like are just all about logic, isn't it? And they don't care about. They think you're an infestation, and he has to go and persuade them to leave. And they're like, no, my great grandparents died creating this aqueduct, and blah 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 blah. So it's quite interesting because it makes us think about, okay, so borders are contingent, but also people, lived experience can have all sorts of produces a lot of meaning around place and identity.
That's often indecipherable to the high political kind of realm. The people, these things might seem irrational viewed from that perspective, but they make a lot of sense, and they give meaning to people's lives. Who might, for instance, that they might like a particular view or a particular walk that they go on. They might like a particular set of interactions with other people in the marketplace or something like that. The thought of having that dismantled and rebuilt in a different way in a different place may not be something that they can accept.
And we've sort of seen this kind of trajectory through IR theory, haven't we? Where we start with very behaviourist, rationalist type explanations, like realism, and it's all about self-interest, kind of like this rational man. And then liberalism, you can have like enlightened self-interest through interdependence and blah blah. And then you get constructivists are like, maybe we should look at language and the construction of identity. Maybe and then it gets and then you have the more critical kind of parts of it, and all of that has allowed us to look at emotion, affect, meaning-making processes, how we produce knowledges about places, how that impacts how we think about ourselves. So all this is to say I don't agree, Faiz. I support the Maquis. I support the Maquis. And luckily they're not a prescribed group in the UK because they don't actually exist.
All right. So, in that episode where they have to evacuate the colony because the Shiliak are coming, the contrivance there is that those humans, flew off course, were lucky to have landed on the planet they ended up landing on, which happened to be, thanks to some natural phenomenon, cloaked from everything. The Federation didn't even know they existed, and these people couldn't leave and couldn't communicate their existence. So Data has a harder time persuading them to leave because they've not had the support of the Federation or access to advanced technology to survive. So very much, my grandfather died building this aqueduct. But for a standard Federation citizen, no one dies for nothing or wants for anything. You like that aqueduct? Great. I'll replicate you 3 more. You can have them all in your garden, decorating it. You want a house? Tomorrow you want a mansion? No worries. I can just replicate that for you. There's no struggle. There's nothing to want for.
Well, there's no struggle if you believe in a fully materialist understanding of society and politics. But I don't. I think those things are essential. and they can drive things, and they're conditions of possibility and all of this, but I don't think that they are enough on their own.
Fair
There will always be other things going on and excess. That's why studying this is so interesting, because there's so many different dimensions that we have to look at.
Yeah.
Faiz is dying on that hill.
I don't know.
So am I. I'm dying on my Maquis hill.
I like this. Yeah. Okay. Last segment of the show then. What is this saying about utopia? The utopia of Star Trek
Doesn't exist.
And liberalism in general. It doesn't exist, Sarah.
No.
But it hasn't existed for a while.
I think that's what I just think.
This podcast.
Well, yeah,
right?
but I just think this is in that later season where we really start to see it all fall apart at the seams.
Yeah. Agreed. This airs just before the finale of the show, which is fantastic. You should watch it. We're not going to talk about it on the podcast, but all good things. And
Oh, that one makes me cry at the end.
it's so good. But yeah, there's not. What am I saying? Yeah, it airs near the end of the show, so it's alongside Deep Space Nine. A lot of darkness has seeped into the show at this point, and this is one of the best examples of that kind of challenge that the later seasons present to the earlier seasons' optimism. Because here there's no optimism, is there? Other than in the Maquis.
But isn't it interesting? Because in that way, the earlier seasons of Next Generation, and one of the reasons why I think people love it so much, is because it's actually the aberration. That's the utopian vision. That's the unusual thing. And then all the Star Treks that come afterwards are much more cognizant of the complexities and the moral ambiguities and all that. There's none of this. So this is like this, we get this tantalizing view of a moral universe. And it's not a coincidence that happened at the late 80s, early 90s, when there was all that amazing optimism about, I don't know. So I think this is more like a return to the norm, like, oh yeah, actually, a bit more realpolitik. Nechayev is always Miss Realpolitik, isn't she?
Yeah, Admiral Nechayev is a character, recurring minor character who's Picard's boss, basically, and she'll come and she'll like give some missions.
She's another hard-ass like admiral, but all the women who are admirals have to be really hard-ass. It's interesting. They have to be really like quite brutal.
That's true.
Yeah, because you can't have authoritative women otherwise. That was also why Janeway was interesting, because she started off like that, being really like guns blazing at every opportunity, a bit like G.I. Jane. And then later on in that season, in that series, she actually adopts she almost becomes kind of motherly, and I really like the complexity of her kind of woman as a leader character. But in Star Trek Next Generation, any strong women have to be really kind of guns blazing. It just shows that limited kind of post-feminist imagination. Just can't actually make sense of these women in this utopia. So in that sense, in terms of gender, there was no utopia in Next Generation at all.
Yeah, that's been fairly consistent.
Yeah.
As we've discussed in every episode, I think.
Yeah.
And we haven't even touched on the more egregious episodes dealing with gender. I like what you said about bordering earlier. I think that also shows the limits of sort of both Star Trek's utopian or reductionist vision of societies as sort of singular and homogeneous, and everyone sits in their place and does their thing, as we've talked about previously. But then it also applies to our world order, right? And liberalism's assumptions around states, nation, borders, and the people that live in them, which we can see in so many, every hotspot conflict in the world always has that element to it. I'm here, no, I was here first, you don't speak my language, you don't have the same religion, you look different to me, and yet we're all compelled to live in the same box. And Star Trek just ignores all of that, which is fairly fundamental sort of cause of conflict in our world, by saying all the Klingons are Klingon and they is the same, and they live on Klingon planet, and all the humans is human and they is the same and they live on human planet. And and then the conflict only happens between these different planets. I mean, that's part of the utopian appeal of the earlier seasons of the show and earlier iterations of Star Trek, the original 60s show as well, that humanity can get over its issues. Yes, there's this sort of rivalries and competitions. They're a feature of humanity's past, but in the future, we understand that we are all human, and therefore we're all the same. But the dark side of that is that we're all the same. Meaning what? Meaning we're all liberal. Meaning we all have the same concept of human rights.
And to have a concept of sameness, you have to have a concept of the other. So we're back.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Which is what that's your whole thing, isn't it, Faiz? That's your
That's my whole
research.
thing. Yeah.
So you can never escape the bind. So you have this Federation universe, which is supposed to be a totality of everything working like this, but it never can be, because it always has to have another to make sense. Has to be a periphery.
Yep. Oof.
Deep.
Indeed. This is the penultimate episode of this season of the podcast. Next week, we're going to go back a few episodes and watch episode 20, I think. Let me check. Yep, season 7, episode 20, which is called Journey's End. Now, I chose to end with this because I think it's particularly egregious and hilarious in many of the things we've been discussing today. So if today was a more serious, or this episode was a more serious discussion over questions of identity, belonging, home, borders, conflict, next week will be the same, but with more swearing. Because instead of the Maquis, you have to imagine that the writers decided to place literal Native Americans on a planet somewhere and call it the Native American planet, and then have this same story play out. No, they are Native. How else are you going to know if they're Native Americans if they're not dressed in denim and flipping? They have straw strewn about the floor.
Yeah.
It is awful. It is awful. We're going to have a lot to discuss, and that is waiting for us in 2 weeks' time.
And it features Wesley, probably the most hated character, surely. Uber geek.
Definitely the most hated character, but I can't hate on him anymore because Will Wheaton, the actor who plays Wesley, is such a genuine guy. So I'm going to try and rein that in and reserve my ire for depictions of race.
His fault he had to play the Uber geek. He's such a keener Uber geek. Although at least in this episode he developed a bit.
We get to see emo Wesley in this one. In the next one. Right, so we'll see you.
And he disappoints everyone.
Yes,
that's also good.
Absolutely. He does a Ro Lauren. We'll see you in 2 weeks' time for that final episode of this season. And it remains for me to say thank you to Dan.
Thank you, Faiz.
And thanks and bye to Sarah.
Thank you, Faiz.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Thank you for listening to Intergalactic Relations. This podcast is made possible by the International Relations Department at the University of Sussex. Please subscribe to keep up with the latest episodes.